Master Modes is the introduction of a new flight system to Star Citizen with the objective of unifying ship roles and archetypes in an attempt to create a new, healthier foundation of balance for the game moving forward. But not everyone is in agreement. The top pilots among the ranks of the top orgs and squadrons in Star Citizen who have dedicated their time to the art of dogfighting are a valuable and respected part of the community, and in a game that does and will continue to reward skill, these pilots will always excel in that role. I've been a backer since 2015 and flown and played every flight model since. I've cast Atmo Esports fighter flight tournaments, and as a content creator, took part in the Invitational CitizenCon tournament on stage just last year alongside some of the best dogfighters in the game. Now, I'm not a top combat pilot.
Whoa! Down goes Detox, ladies and gentlemen.
I consider myself at a decent or above average level, but I do have a good understanding of what it takes to be at the top. And let me tell you, I truly respect the minority of players who have mastered the incredibly difficult and competitive nature of legacy space combat in the game, but I also respect the majority of backers who were sold a space combat experience in Star Citizen that they cannot be part of, or simply cannot access. The price of admission? Countless hours of studying theory, practicing maneuvers, embedding yourself in a one-dimensional group and lifestyle of practice and regular training just to be able to keep your nose pointed at your opponent's ship, before wrestling your ship's movements for the final rewarding possibility of potentially hitting a pixel-perfect box, otherwise known as the pip. For the majority of Star Citizen players, this prospect simply isn't fun or a rewarding way to spend their time in Star Citizen. And with so many variables and freedom of expression, as some pilots would call it in the current flight model, balancing and creating space for different ships and different playstyles has become too difficult and uninclusive for the game's developers over the many years of development. This needs to change. That is what Master Modes aims to tackle, and if you ask me, this has been a long time coming and something I and many others have always foreseen. If you know the history of my content over many years, I've always taken part in large events and operations, as we call them, that create space for elements of the game I and my orgmates would ordinarily be unable to experience without some form of player-implemented rule sets. These experiences have been the best experiences I've ever had playing Star Citizen, in anticipation of the day they would happen organically based on a fundamental shift in the way the game is balanced. This is what we stand to gain with Master Modes. Yogi and team are wiping clean the existing balance and flight model to create a new foundation that can be built upon over many months and years, bulldozing a landscape that currently resembles a sprawling slum of ships and playstyles, overlooked by a light fighter skyscraper enabled by previous game design. In this video, I'm going to share some of my perspective on Master Modes, the way it affects the dynamics of play between different playstyles and ships, and my current ideas on how to make some of the ship roles in Master Modes work better, including interceptors. If pilots are honest with themselves, the reward and fun of being a highly skilled dogfighting pilot in the legacy model is to sit at the top of the space combat food chain at all times. In a game where fighters can counter everything, get good enough and you can't lose. So what happens when entire organizations made up of players who can't lose meet each other in space? Boredom, frustration, and tedium. When two equally skilled orcs fight each other now, particularly in space where speeds are much higher and the ability to disengage and string out the fight indefinitely across hundreds of kilometers is commonplace, no one wins. If you observe or take part in these high-level ace pilot battles in the PU, players are barely able to secure kills over long, drawn-out, sweaty periods of time. There is no prior thought given to either side's overall strategy or fleet composition. It just becomes a constant game of cat and mouse, where two sides meet and wait for one another to make a mistake in order for an opportunity to present itself. Don't just take my word for it. Virgil, who is an accomplished pilot in the Legacy model and Master Modes, makes this point in one of his recent videos discussing the flight model, and it's one I've observed over many years.
If you gain awareness and you gain training, it's still broken. You still can't force a 1v1 with an opponent that doesn't bow his head and agree to keep the fight. Otherwise, you're going to get the same scenario where the same clowns are just running away from 1v1s the moment they're under any threat. You can't do that. No amount of training can fix the fact that the 1v1 is only possible with 2 players that elect to choose it. You cannot force it. And it's the same with a group fight. A group fight is only going to happen if one group is considerably worse than the other. Otherwise, it's a stalemate every single time. So, like, these are gigantic issues with live. Like, the game doesn't work in live. It doesn't.
If there was more room in these situations for interplay between different ship types and roles, leveraged by players of different skill levels and interests who can make a difference, these fights would be much more dynamic, interesting, and rewarding for the players involved. This is why fights in Atmosphere in the Legacy model are so much more exciting, more closely resembling the World War II in space experience Star Citizen has been designed for, cutting out some of the high-speed, high-energy frustrations observable in the Legacy model. If everyone tomorrow reached the peak of light fighter combat, no one would play. There would be no one to shoot and no one to kill and no hierarchy. This is why it is so important to adopt a more role-based approach to the flight model and tuning, stripping fighters of their ultimate supremacy and injecting some much-needed depth into the many other areas of space combat that have been completely neglected. Master Modes is trying to move closer towards the rock, paper, scissors model of balance, where the outcome of certain ship matchups in Master Modes will be dictated more so by the ships you choose and eventually how you outfit, tune, and crew them, with less of the outcome dictated solely by a pilot's ability to push the soft counter boundaries of a single ship type to overcome any problem. Fighters should be the scalpel, but right now they're the hammer and everything else is the nail. Yes, skill should matter, but the amount of skill you can impose on the game around you needs to be contained within certain limits, i.e. the ship's role. You can have freedom of skill expression, but not at the cost of other players' freedom of choice. Buzzcut Psycho covers the rock, paper, scissors dynamic well in one of his videos that I will link below.
The way this concept of balance would work in Star Citizen is to apply each category of ship a role. And I will only be using this logic for ships currently in the game. Just what we have now, no concepts, nothing like that. Rock. Hammerhead and above would be your rock. Paper. Bombers would be your paper. Anything which is designed to kill a ship the class of a Hammerhead or above. Think the Eclipse, the Ares, the Gladiator, anything like that. Torpedoes, etc. Scissors. The light fighters. Gladius, Hornet, Lightning, Arrow, you get it by now. This concept will allow for ships to start fulfilling roles and fleet compositions to have meaning. No more omni-role ships doing everything. This would create balance, teamwork, and give CIG a base to start from and expand upon.
There isn't much more that needs to be said from me on this matter. I will say CIG seems to get it. Yogi briefly discusses their intention to fit ships within roles in ISC last week.
Master mode is the thing that makes ship combat exciting and making sure that the ships that you have in the game perform in the roles that we have envisioned for them.
And that some ships, as part of their type and design, will be able to exist between roles, which to my interpretation should provide some room for the freedom of skill expression that some pilots are scared of losing.
That these archetypes are just reference frames for the type of tuning you want to give a ship. It does not mean that every ship that you have in the verse will fit a specific archetype. There are ships which are in between. For example, the Saber. Is it a medium or a light fighter? It's somewhere in between. The Cutlass has not the durability of a heavy fighter, has, however, the turret of a heavy fighter, so it's somewhere in between. So there are ships which do not fit exactly into these frames.
They just need to realize they can't do everything. There has been a lot of talk and fear of a lowered skill ceiling. Besides the fact that I think it is far too early to proclaim the ceiling is falling on our heads, with so many missing supporting features and implementation of master modes to the PU, no one has yet to clearly define what the skill ceiling should look like. And I hate to say this, but I have to wonder if that is because many of the people arguing against the lowering of the skill floor are simply scared of losing a fighter supremacy they've enjoyed for so many years. We keep hearing that the skill ceiling for fighters has been lowered, so what should it look like when it's sitting at the correct height? Is it the potential for a single fighter pilot to be able to overcome overwhelming odds? Sure, but how much? Where does it end before we end up straight back in the laps of the legacy flight model again? How do you balance this? Historic flight models tells us you don't.
This is so much more fun than Are you having fun? I'm having fun.
Hey, Andros wins. Let's go.
All right, Buccaneers, health check. I am green ship, nothing
Green
damaged.
ship.
Green ship.
My buddy Avenger 1 recently showcased how 4 interceptors with higher speeds and the ability to negotiate a fight with enough time can take out a Hammerhead, a ship designed to counter these exact situations. There was also some talk about interceptors becoming the new light fighters due to their ability to negotiate the fight. There are a couple of ways this can easily be dealt with in my opinion, some of which A1 also suggests in his video. First, I'd like to address the Hammerhead Interceptor matchup. Interceptors in Master Modes are simply doing to Hammerheads what light fighters are doing to Hammerheads in the Legacy model. At CitizenCon last year, I met Yogi, the head of the vehicle experience team and Master Modes. One of the things I immediately wanted to ask him was about turret weapon modifiers, as these are things me and my community have been asking for ages, because it solves many problems turrets have. A size 3 Panther should behave differently when attached to a turret versus when it is attached to a ship. A ship's hull or chassis or turret type should provide a passive buff to the weapons attached to it. This buff can be in the form of range increase, velocity increase, cone of fire decrease, fire rate. There are options. Simultaneously, we can reduce the range of these weapons when attached to certain ship hulls, meaning fighters generally need to get closer to deliver damage. You can also simply increase damage fall off at certain ranges, and in the case of the Hammerhead and other large ships, as has been discussed and suggested by many others, change their shield to constant higher regen so that more focused firepower is required in order to start bringing down the shields. There are many ways we can correct some of these smaller issues of Master Modes without making crazy big sweeping changes that bring us dangerously close to the Legacy model, which simply doesn't work. The bad news is, at least as of October 2023, Yogi told me he had no intentions of using turret modifiers. Though we've seen and had Master Modes a while now, his opinion may have changed since. A1 rightfully makes these same or similar suggestions in his video, which was great to see.
You do it by limiting weapon ranges on fighters, by slightly increasing velocities on multicrews, by adjusting the ratios of accelerations to speed so we get a better, smoother, more exciting game experience, and multicrew ships have a fair and exciting experience.
The other problem that needs addressing is the Interceptor's ability to potentially become the new light fighters in Master Modes. Well, in my opinion, the answer again is simple. Nerf them. More clearly define their role as interceptors and not fighters. But how could that look? In my opinion, the Interceptor's role should be to chase, gang, and finish weak and fleeing ships, including other interceptors at flat, high speeds. It should not sit inside a dogfight and brawl with fighters, and if it does, it should be very risky. An interceptor should have reduced shield and weapon capacitor or ammo capacity in favor of increased engine efficiency and escapability instead. A larger afterburner pool and higher afterburner speed, but similar SCM speeds to that of a light fighter, making it inefficient to try and brawl with inherently weaker fighting capabilities when alone. A light fighter should be able to react to an interceptor with a higher turn rate and acceleration to gain a positional advantage and punish it quickly for sticking around too long. Medium fighters with extra hard points make it even riskier for interceptors to engage with them, and heavy fighters like the Vanguard with a turret should be able to easily deal with an interceptor. With its higher boost capacity and speed, the interceptor could of course string out the fight and repeatedly disengage, making it difficult for you to finish the kill. But guess what? It's now your interceptor's job, your wingman, their role, to deal with them. Of course, interceptors are also a great use case for missiles, punishing them for repeatedly zooming and booming. This is perhaps where ships with the role of missile boats come in, or medium or heavy fighters outfitted with heavier missile loadouts to deal with these situations when they arise. Reduce the interceptor's countermeasure capacity, and you can punish an interceptor that wants to repeatedly dance with you until they're dry. Overall, utilizing this tactic with interceptors can work, but it would be an inefficient use of the interceptor's time, but doable in certain situations. The interceptor's role should essentially be to support fighters in fights and chase and finish weak ships. They could give the interceptor a window of time where their afterburner is capable of keeping up with nav-moded ships, making fleeing a fight a scary proposition if you hadn't already dealt or tied up the enemy's interceptors. So you start to see how more clearly defining ship roles and conceding power from others opens up opportunity and creates a more interesting and inclusive combat experience for different players, ships, and playstyles. If you allow certain ship roles too much room to express themselves, you suppress everything else. There's also the elephant in the room of a lack of objective-based combat and purpose for dynamic battles to take place in the first place, which I feel is another fact many players fail to consider. This could in the future come in the form of capital ships, as we saw with the recent Idris event, space stations, high-value cargo hauling, or base building, but I think that is a large topic for another video. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my thoughts. I don't claim to have all the answers, but thanks to my YouTube channel and you, my fellow meaty viewers, I can join and share in the important conversation surrounding master modes using the power of video. Let me know what you think. As always, I try to read and respond to everyone's messages on my videos, whether gameplay or commentary related. I appreciate you guys, thank you for your support, and thank you, of course, to my meaty members who support me over on Fourth Wall, which is like a better version of Patreon on steroids. If you enjoy my content and want to see more, feel free to join me live on Twitch or join my Discord for updates on content drops and my community.
Yogi. Yogi.
Oh,
Oh.